That's a good call.
Okay, I think it is time to get started. All right, so thank you all again for participating in our panel. Also, anybody who's watching on the live feed or watching later on YouTube, this is posted on YouTube. For those of you who are watching live, you're welcome to tweet any relevant discussion questions to 781-473-0594, and then we'll include that in some of the conversations. So, all right, so just kind of background information on this panel discussion. We are all, well, most of us, not the panel members, but most of us are members of a diversity and equity in higher education course. And we were, an assignment we're doing is discussing the experiences of LGBQ undergraduate students in higher ed and what kinds of policies can be implemented to improve environments and outcomes for students within this population. So one thing I know we wanted to address before we get started is why trans students aren't part of this conversation, and that's for multiple reasons. One is another group in our class is focusing on trans students specifically, and another reason is there are, I guess the best way to summarize it is a quote from one of our professor's books, as he says that sexual identity and gender identity are not to be conflated, and it is important to remember that trans individuals also have a sexual identity that may fall anywhere on the continuum of sexual fluidity. So we wanted to kind of give a separate focus for each group. So all of our panel members, if you would be so kind as to introduce yourselves, give your name, the institution you're a member to, and how you identify. So whoever would like to get started.
I'm Dan. I go to Cornell, and I am gay.
I'm Summer. I go to Bryn Mawr College, and I'm a lesbian.
I'm Alex. I'm from Colorado Mesa University, and I'm gay.
All right, thank you guys, all of you, for participating and taking your time to do this. One person we are currently waiting on is Dylan Schuster, so hopefully he will join us after we get the ball rolling. So we're going to go ahead and get started. One topic here we wanted to talk about is all of your experiences. So in your transition from high school to higher education, did your experiences differ? And so, if so, what way? What environmental factors made this transition smooth or difficult? So anybody who wants to chime in first.
I mean, I wasn't out in high school besides my senior year. In addition, like, there wasn't really any gay support network at my school. Like, there were diversity initiatives, but there wasn't like a LGBTQ resource center. And at Cornell, there is like a full-blown resource center. And like, you know, when I came here, like, I identified fully as gay, and like I was out, and I wasn't like, so like I knew myself versus high school. I didn't really know myself going into it. And there were resources. There were people that I could reach out to. There were clubs. There were people who had gone through like different stages of like their being out, and so like it was comforting to see all that openness in college versus high school. People weren't that open about it. So.
All right, wonderful, thank you.
I guess my transition was also like a positive one. At my high school, it was like tiny. I think there were like 30 people in my graduating class, so I was the only like out lesbian. And then transitioning from that to a women's college like Bryn Mawr, where the gay population was just like not only very like a lot larger, but more I guess empowered would be the word.
Oh no. Did she tap out?
Uh-oh, Summer, did we lose you?
Teresa was at me.
Oh. All right, we got you
It's
back.
good to know. I was worried it was me.
Everything just froze. Sorry.
No, everybody else was moving except like Samara was her head was like tilted back. And
Yeah, you stopped for a
and
second.
I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not. And everybody else was moving.
So we lost a little bit of the last part of your comment, Summer. Could you continue on that? Sorry.
Oh yeah. What was the last part you heard?
I think we caught where you were talking about how empowered Bryn Mawr's student population, population was.
Oh yeah, and just it was definitely different to go from being like an isolated individual to part of the community, and have like Dan was saying, a lot of resources and a lot of different conversations happening that just weren't happening at all at my smaller high school.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
I guess for me, I didn't come out until I came to college, and it was, I don't know, something that growing up in a very Christian conservative household, I, just didn't know how family would even react, let alone all my friends here. And, I had been seeing some people here in Grand Junction starting to get in touch with the community here. Started to reach out, I guess, to the Gay Straight Alliance at the college, but I guess that kind of only attracted one certain type of, I guess, LGBT community. So I didn't, I guess, feel the full extent of what was here and just the type of person I wanted to be. And I had just started the conversation with a couple people that I had became friends with, and it wasn't until I had started liking things on Facebook that were Human Rights Campaign and just other I guess social groups and different posts that come on Facebook about the LGBT community and in support of furthering human rights across America and the world. And my grandma is always on Facebook, and she, because she doesn't have a whole lot to do, she very much stalks me on Facebook. So anything that I liked on Facebook, it would pop up in her feed as well. And so one day, I had actually just kissed my boyfriend goodbye, and my grandmother calls me on the phone and says point blank, "Are you gay?" And I hadn't told any of my family yet, so it kind of definitely caught me off guard. But just to know right offhand, I lied right offhand too. I said no, I don't know, I just support that. And then it just sat in for the rest of the day. I just felt so bad. I called my grandma back and was like, "No, I'm definitely gay." And she's like, "It's all good. You can still go to heaven," is what she told me. And she she just had love and support. And my mom is like, we want nothing but love and the best for you. So just having my family, even though they weren't here with me in college, like just being able to call them was just the biggest support. And yeah, I guess just meeting the few people I have met in my tiny little community here have definitely made a difference. Well, deciding that I'm still the exact same person I am. It's just yeah.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for sharing that. So many of you talked about resources at your institution, or starting those conversations at your institution that helped you affirm your identity. So in your experience, how has your specific college, university affected how you view yourself as gay, lesbian, or bisexual, queer, however, whatever terminology you do use? Did it help you affirm your identity, and if there were any ways that it also deterred you expressing your identity?
I think I've always been very confident with my identity. Like, I know that, like, I'm sexually attracted to men. Like, that wasn't ever a question in my mind. I think it's just the whole LGBTQ spectrum became like I was enlightened by the whole thing. Like, I learned all the different colors of the rainbow, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, I didn't know like the difference between sexuality and, you know, gender identification, for example. And I've had a lot of really in-depth conversations with people who are going through like all the different like spectrums of the LGBTQ like community. So, like, if anything, it was a learning experience about other people's transitions and, like, you know, how they're trying to reconcile their own like identities. And so that seems like less of like you just learn more about what other people are going through, I guess. So it's more like an outward experience for me, at least, because I know like that I'm gay, and I mean Cornell is a very accepting place, so that wasn't an issue. It was more just learning how to be sensitive to other people's transitions, and also to, like, you know, not assume something about somebody, and to be really cognizant of people's transitions, I guess.
Wonderful. And just kind of a follow-up question with that. Do you think your institution helped facilitate that conversation, or was that more you and whoever you were having that conversation with sparked it on your own?
I think it was on my own, because Cornell has a really big gay community. It's like it's 12,000 students and 12,000 undergrads, and about 1,000 of those students identify an LGBTQ spectrums, and there's so many opportunities. There's like 12 clubs underneath the LGBTQ umbrella organization, so like you can literally seek out your own like resources, to seek out your own like communities within that community. So, like, I mean, I will pass like somebody in the community every single day, whether it be like, you know, the dining halls in my major, or like through any of my other extracurricular activities. So like in those passings, like I like really like talking to people. So, you know, just it's come up in random conversations per se, if that makes sense. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
No, don't worry about it. It was a long one. So it kind of has multiple parts. In your experience, how has your institution affected how you view yourself as gay, lesbian, or bisexual? I guess that wasn't multiple parts. Yeah, no, that was it.
Okay, yeah, short attention span, my bad. I definitely, yeah, like Dan was just saying, I have always been very sure in like my own identity as, you know, a lesbian. Like, it was never, I came to school and I was like, oh wait, now I'm gay. It was just like sort of to be part of a community where I hadn't before, and to be able to be, you know, have a community of people who had gone through similar experiences as myself. Like, that was pretty much the only difference in sort of coming to Bryn Mawr from where I was previously. I have to say I haven't been a very active member in the community, though, at Bryn Mawr, because I found once my initial sort of shock and, like, being, I don't know, making that transition into, like, being in that community, I found that it wasn't for me. I didn't want to hang out with only queer people or people who identified as LGBTQ. Like, that's definitely an attitude that you see a lot at Bryn Mawr. It's kind of like an insular community, and that wasn't something that I was interested in being a part of, I found, after a few months at school. So if anything, I just became sort of more independent in my sexuality. I found myself to be less defined by who I prefer to sleep with than I had at school, because previously it had been like me on my own, like the only out lesbian. That's who I was. Like I defined myself kind of like as that out lesbian. And then coming to Bryn Mawr, I sort of was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to define myself by that. And there was a whole group of people who did, and they only hung out with other people who were also gay. And I was like, yeah, I had no interest in that. And so I found myself sort of looking, I don't know, devoting more time in my other interests, developing, I don't know, aspects of my personality that didn't have anything to do with my sexuality. So that was sort of a growing experience for me, more than, you know, growing in my like sexual identity. I grew as a total human being, I think.
That's great. Thank you for that insight. You know, college really is about developing your full identity and intersecting identities, and so it's nice to hear that you address that deepening aspect as well. All right. Alex, do you have anything?
I just started getting involved with the school in general, not in, you know, LGBTQ community. And the director of student life, I definitely look up to at the college, and he identifies as gay as well. And, you know, there's kind of like an unspoken thing there. I just kind of look up to him, you know, as a person and as a really great leader and a great hard worker and everything else. And that's been the example for me. Not, you know, it's just another component of who I am, and I think you know, I still just want to do great things in my community, you know, not just for the LGBT community, but for the school as a whole. And he definitely set an example. So I found more, I guess, strength from that side of the institution, in that, you know, we have like the safe zone stickers that professors and faculty can put on their door and, you know, be a safe place to talk, I guess. But that just, you know, is nice to just see in general, just know that you're comforting, and that I didn't actually need the help. I feel like I didn't need to, you know, go talk to people and vent. I did it just as a, you know, any other human being would. Like, we all have troubles and like need support, and find those support, and just to have, knowing that, you know, almost all the faculty has these safe zone stickers on their door, and that, yeah, I can just look up to people within the LGBT community, but still, yeah, and just still find that support. Yeah, I guess I never, the only other thing that I said I'd looked out to was, you know, the Gay Straight Alliance, but that was just nice to know that, you know, there are students, in fact, at my school, and I'm not the only one, because where I go to college is definitely what we refer to as like a cowboy town, and it's definitely a little bit smaller, and so it's not as friendly as a community as even where I had grown up. You know, not as diverse, definitely a tougher community to be gay in, for sure. So it's just knowing that there are people here, and we still have that support even within the university is super helpful.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, so one thing that we addressed a little bit in conversation in our class is this concept of a hidden identity, how sexual orientation, sexual identity can be considered hidden in most communities. It's not as outwardly portrayed necessarily. How, you know, many of you talked about how you were developing other parts of your identity, but how have you navigated the disclosure of your sexual orientation on campus, given it's a hidden identity? How did you negotiate that coming out process during your college career, even if you already were out, but coming out in different parts of that college community? And let me know if that doesn't make sense, and I'll try and articulate it a different way.
Um, Interesting that you asked that question because I think it's pretty obvious that I'm homosexual. So, and when I
That's the
came,
same
so
thing.
when I came to school, like I had a lot of those moments, like within the first week of my friends, like talking about it, like but like almost in passing, as if like it wasn't that big of a deal because like it was apparent, but they weren't judging me for it. So when I finally like bit the bullet or like identified the elephant in the room, they're like, oh, no surprise there, but I'm like, okay, so it was like an easy breezy conversation. And then now, like as a senior, like I've looked back on the 4 years of my college career, and like being gay has not like uh, reduced the number of opportunities I've had. I think that like if anything, like I've really channeled like I have a really big passion for event planning, and so there's this really big event dance party that brings together all like the gays on campus, and like I was a little bit of a party nut like my freshman year, and so I got involved with that planning process. And so when I tell people that I plan like the biggest gay event on campus, they immediately assume that like I'm very involved in the community, but really like I love the logistics of planning. I'm very like tangential to all the policy that happens around like the gay community. Like I'm very like I know like the policies are there, but I don't like read up on them. I'm not like on the forefront of like activism. I'm just more here to like sort of like make a fun environment. I don't know. I just love event planning, so that's why like this was the first outlet that I had. I loved gay parties, so like when I was a freshman, and so I just decided to go right into gay party planning, and like that is sort of like kind of like made people wonder like how gay I am, if like that makes sense. But I think that like like nobody judged me for it. They love the event. They think it's a really cool that I have this passion. So like if anything, like I would almost say like people in the gay community are more like, oh, like Dan plans this gay event, like he must be like the figurehead of everything that this event stands for. But really, I like don't identify with like the actual themes of the event. For example, I just like putting it together, if that makes sense. So just because you advocate for like or like you put something there doesn't mean you're actually like that sort of identity. So if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And kind of like a follow-up question, did you ever find that you were over-identified? I'm trying to find terminology that people were labeling
Yeah,
too much.
I think people were like, since this is such a big event, like, and I'll be honest, like it's a very out there, like kids show up and like it's a sex positive event, and like kids show up in like any revealing clothing that makes them feel comfortable, and like they like people wear really sexy outfits, and we get drag queens, and like it's just a huge 400-person dance party. And so I'm an engineer, and like I'm very a homebody type person. Like but I just do like the logistics of planning, and I think that when people see that like I'm posting all these things on Facebook about a really raunchy event, they're like, oh, this kid must be very like sexual himself, but or very like involved in the gay community. But again, like I'm not very familiar with policy. I more so just love the process of event planning. So, and literally, I have a whole team of people who like make up the theme, who come up, who like make the posters, and like I don't do any of the decorative aspects. I just raise the money, for example. I talk to the police sergeant, the fire marshal, like communications to make sure that everything comes together smoothly. So, but again, like it's really hard explaining all the work that goes into that event, and like you're still coinciding with all the university rules while you're doing it, and people really only see like the final product of like, oh my god, like this is like the biggest raunchiest event on campus, like this kid must be that type of person. So but nobody's held it against me in any way, if that's what you're trying to hint at. But
Not
I
in
don't care.
particular.
Like people can say what they want. I'm not gonna be bothered by it. Like I love doing what I do, and like if you're somebody who's my friend, like you're gonna want to know more about it rather than just judge me like blindly per se.
Okay, thank you.
No, sorry. This is a long response.
Oh no, we want to hear what you all have to say. So take your time. So Summer and Alex, just also the same question with hidden identity, and then also if you felt over-labeled, if you want to elaborate that as well.
Well, it's funny that you call it a hidden identity because I feel like for so much of my life it hasn't been. Unfortunately, there are a lot of stereotypes around like psyche women, and I happen to like fit most of them. I'm actually growing my hair out right now, which is different, but like normally I have it like partially shaved, and it's very like if you like Google an image of like lesbians, I'm like kind of what it looks like, what pops up, which is like it's like not great. I don't endorse it at all. I feel like people should be able to have their hair and wear as many like button downs and plaid as they want without people making assumptions. But that's really not the world we live in right now. And especially when I go to a women's college like Bryn Mawr, pretty much from the instant like I stepped foot on campus, everyone was like, "Baby gay right there. She's gonna be part of the lesbian community." Like very easily identifiable. However, there were some people I met my freshman year who would not come from, I don't know, they were from smaller towns or they were from overseas or abroad, and so they didn't, I don't know, have that same stereotypical image in their head that the rest of everyone I met my freshman year did, and so it wasn't immediately like, "Oh, do you have a girlfriend, Summer?" It was like, "Oh, do you have a boyfriend?" And not always like that one time someone like wasn't assuming I was gay was always kind of shocking. So that was like kind of different. And I had like, I don't know, I got so used to being like, I don't know, identified by other people as queer immediately, like that it was, I don't know, it was interesting when I had to like come out to people. That was like kind of a shock to me, just with the, I don't know, particularly international students. But for the most part, everyone had like very, I don't know, like very rational reactions. No one ever, but yeah. So I can't say that I've had like issues coming out. I actually, my research advisor, coming out to my research advisor was weird because that's like the first time I actually came out to someone who had like such a pivotal role in sort of my career. Like that's the first time I've ever had to like talk to someone about my sexuality, and it wasn't like I had to, but it sort of came up. Like I worked very closely with him, and like you know his letter of recommendation is what you know got me into grad school. So sort of that whole aspect was kind of weird. I actually just walked into lab one day wearing a shirt that says "Nobody knows I'm a lesbian," and so like that's sort of how I came out to him. I kind of like wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, maybe it's about time we have this conversation, and he did. He was like, "So, are you gay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really gay." And so, yeah. But anyone who's teaching at Bryn Mawr isn't gonna have a negative LGBTQ students because otherwise they wouldn't be at Bryn Mawr. So it's, I was slightly nervous just because a lot hinged on like his reaction to me as a human being and not just like as a, you know, research scientist. But ultimately, the like environment at Bryn Mawr is very like you can come out to whoever you want. You're never gonna be like negatively impacted, or at least if you are, then it's gonna be very an isolated incident, and you tell someone about it, and they're gonna be outraged on your behalf. Like that's just how things are at my school.
I guess for me, it's I don't know. I'm as far as stereotypes go. I guess I'm the one who could go either way if you didn't know me. And you know, I didn't even know I was gay myself, and I never even gave myself the chance to have the conversation until you know I got to college and got out of my little town. So with people here, you know, I have friends and they don't necessarily know, but they've never asked. But for people who do ask and they're, do you have a girlfriend or something? Like, oh, no, I have a boyfriend, or however that comes off. So it's just clarifying, or no, I'm definitely gay. Like I feel like it's, for my mental sanity, I almost have to like clarify for every, just for people who ask, just to stay out of like, for me, it almost just feels awkward, and I feel like it's my own creation. Like I make it feel awkward because I've decided to. So by like just announcing it, it clears it out in my own head, and I can not feel awkward and feel comfortable with myself. So yeah. But I've never had a bad reaction. Just some people, some of my friends, they don't know, they know of me. They see me around campus and stuff, and so when it finally does, like something happens where, yeah, no, I'm gay, and I've only had a couple reactions of people, they're just like, no, you're not, no, you're not, and some people it's, oh, that makes so much sense, like, oh, that totally, you do fit the stereotype. Now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, so it's just for my own sanity. I feel like I have to clarify it for people. And I feel lucky because I feel I'm definitely gay. Like I can identify as that, and it's not a, I was so scared to put the label on myself, but like in hindsight now, it fits perfectly. So.
All right, thank you. And I guess to kind of follow up on that, since Dan and Summer talked about how it was kind of a known thing with their friends, when you're talking about how you have more frequent opportunities where you have to kind of articulate that. Did you feel like you ever had to exaggerate it or anything, or was that ever an issue for you, or not?
Like, I guess not like I needed to act flamboyant or anything like that, I guess.
Yeah, no.
But I guess sometimes, I do poke fun at it myself with other people just because I guess it's more about messing with other people sometimes. But just being able to laugh and poke fun at it myself, like, has definitely been helpful. So the exaggeration is, just more for, I guess, a joke or to just feel comfortable in my own skin.
Mm-hmm. At least from the gay male perspective, I think that, like, in general, if you're more reserved, like, people are more likely to wonder about your sexuality. I think that, like, if you're more flamboyant, people are just automatically going to assume that you're gay. So on that note, I've never had to I'm pretty over-exaggerated in general. So, like, I've never had to overcompensate to tell people that I'm gay. It would be too much. So.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Did you want to do the other half?
You do it.
You're good. All right. So thank you guys for sharing some pretty, personal things in that part of the segment of the conversation. We're gonna start to move on to questions that focus on what you advise faculty, administrators, and/or policymakers to do to improve environments, experiences, and outcomes for other students with similar identities. So we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit. So one of the first questions is, does your campus have a support space, resources for people of your identity? I know most of you had already articulated that. And if so, how have these spaces supported you to reach your academic and social goals? So if you want to identify specific individuals, specific clubs, anything like that that were really important to you during college.
I've got to say that Cornell is very lacking in, like, not at least in LGBTQ support. I think that, like, it could do better. We look really good on paper, for example, but we don't have enough money and support to enact all those policies. So there's literally 2 interns at the Resource Center and 1 full-time staff member who's in charge of everything LGBTQ, from this, like, bridging connections between the administration and, like, the president's office to the LGBT community, to bridging the entire student population, grad students, undergrad, to like the office. So I think there are not really that many resources. Like there's not just much enacted there. And then, like, in terms of other resources, like like, I think individual people have really been essential for my growth, but not like growth as like an LGBTQ individual. I think like, in general, like I seek out friends and I seek out certain people and student activities that I've been very close with for like, any sort of support. Like, it's all my friends are really like my number one support network. But that's just me. But from an administrative, from a resource standpoint, I think Cornell could definitely do better, reaching out to students, because I think there's a lot of students who have their own personal struggles and they can't like go out of their shell, or they just are not brave enough or don't know where to look for resources. Because I think Cornell does have resources like in other facets that like can be of a support. Doesn't have to necessarily be like just an LGBTQ support network, but like it's not very obvious where those resources are. So like I think anybody needs that support like in some form. And it's just hard to find here.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's just about, I feel this, at least my university struggles with how the word gets out to students about anything, like any, even mental health services or any other support services is tough. And I think it's the administration's job to just make sure they all are aware of all the different sorts of resources that are available, and like who to talk to, regarding different communities across campus. And I think that's something that, in my opinion, I don't know if there's a easier way administration or just faculty in general knows how to send and where to send students who are struggling, and how to, I guess, all the faculty at my university have undergone LGBT training, so they understand like how to be, I guess, politically correct about it, because that was something even in our community they needed help with what are the right terms that the administration wants the faculty to use, and like how to, we had the safe zone stickers, like I was saying, and just to put yourself out there if you're going to be a resource. And I think just how that's advertised to students could definitely be better, because like I said, the community that's very out there and obvious isn't always the best supportive. At least in my opinion, for me, it wasn't. The community that's out, it was like the party scene and the go downtown and like just the crazy ragers and stuff, and like. I could see how it'd be attractive for a lot of people, but that, like, it was just tough for me to try to associate with that, I guess, scene. So just having people that I know who I look up to within the university, and just, yeah, it's just advertising that information and putting yourself out there so so students know that you can actually be reached and use them as a resource.
I think my school does a fairly decent job of providing, support and resources for the LGBTQ community. I have not availed myself of any of them, or even really looked that deeply into what's offered, unfortunately. So I'm not totally sure what's going on. They do advertise a lot. I just delete all my emails immediately from sort of the Res Life community. But yeah, if there was sort of an issue that came up, we sort of have this idea on campus that stems from the administrators, that they want the sort of students to handle any issues that come up themselves. They sort of have like a strongly empowered like student government association and dorm leadership teams that are all just composed of undergraduates. And issues that have come up in the past, not necessarily with, I don't know, issues of sexuality or gender, but I don't know, we had this whole issue with racism recently that was kind of publicized. It wasn't good. But there was a lot of pressure from the administration for the student body as a whole to deal with the issues and to decide how they wanted to move forward and what sort of precedent we wanted to set and follow. So I think that sort of carries over into just sort of how individuals deal with, I don't know, their issues on like a personal basis. Everyone is sort of at such a small school with like such a tight knit like gay community. Everyone's always sort of knows what's going on with everyone else. Everyone sort of leans on each other, I think, more than on the administration or resources provided by the administration, which, you know, has its pros and cons. Yeah, Brenlar.
All right, thank you guys. You easily transitioned into the next question, which is about recommendations. A lot of you already touched on your personal recommendations for making those resources more available. I guess maybe to elaborate more on that, if you have any thoughts you have about or other recommendations you have for what your institution could do for students who aren't quite ready to affirm their identity. They're still questioning and they're not quite ready to come out. I know that can be an issue with classroom discussion where students don't quite have a grasp yet. If you have any suggestions in regards to that, or just thoughts, I mean, anything you want to discuss.
I definitely think that addressing people who are going through that thing, like they're going through the identification phase themselves, like, is not the right way to do it. I think it's changing the culture around us that can facilitate them coming to terms with their identity, and like specifically, I think there's certain. I think it's like still like the elephant in the room. Like when I said, like, you know, when I came out, it was kind of like the elephant in the room. I don't think it has to be the elephant in the room. I think, you know, if you are gay, straight, black, you know, Lady Gaga, Born This Way, all the way, hon, you know, like if whatever color you are, whatever sexuality you are, it should not matter. And I think little cultural things can shift. Like, I mean, to me, for specifically the concept of a gaydar is so polarizing. For example, like if you're thinking about if somebody's gay or not, like that's automatically putting them into a box, and I don't think that like the box is the right way to go. I think people should be able to just express themselves however they feel and not be influenced by the culture around them, and not feel pressured to swing one way or the other, because then the swing makes them want to not say anything, wants to be swayed by everybody else, like so it's just not being feel imposed upon, if that makes sense. So, and then in terms of changing things in my school, just better funding. I don't know. I think that the student, the LGBTQ organization on campus can be restructured better. I think a lot of the work falls upon a few people, and I think that the organization can use, with its limited resources, it can use students better, and I think students are willing to go out of their way to make sure that people have like the support that they need. There are plenty of students who are actively involved in the gay community. I just don't think they have any direction as to how they can be more productively positive and towards other people and more of a resource to the whole campus. And I think that's just that, and with that you need like some sort of restructuring in order to be able to facilitate that process. So like definitely students, there should be just more clear-cut set of tasks or set of like objectives that each person has to uphold. So that's my opinion on it.
I kind of think our school is doing a pretty good job, the administration, in providing support. We have something called like wellness. It's a class you have to take your first semester. It's kind of feels like a waste of time, but they really let you know what resources are available. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention, unfortunately, but they do give you sort of all the resources that I think you need. I think each student has like 6 sessions per academic year with a counselor, and they're all very well trained in sort of LGBTQ transitioning issues, and are, you know, very available for anyone on campus who needs to speak with them. So I feel like on that front, the administration does, does a good job in being aware of sort of any issues that come up. But again, I think that for someone who's just sort of, I don't know, coming to terms with their sexuality or investigating that sort of aspect of themselves, the gay community itself at Bryn Mawr is kind of overwhelming at times. There's just not a lot of like niches, I think, for individuals who either don't want to be very active in, I don't know, I don't want to say like the rights movements, because if you're interested, everyone should be interested in that. But if you're not going to be, very, very gay, if you only want to be gay and like, I like sleeping with people who are the same gender and I don't want that to be my whole identity, there's not like a whole lot of support for that on campus, which is actually kind of shocking. And I feel like that could be more of an issue in just for people coming out and just saying, yeah, it's not a big deal. I happen to like sex with people of the same gender. That's all I'm going to say about my sexuality. I don't want it to be a defining factor. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like if we could do a better job of making that the conversation rather than, all right, now let's put you in this box and talk about what gay pride parade you're going to go to next week. Like, if we could avoid that situation and have more support for that sort of attitude, I feel like it would be helpful for a lot of people on campus.
Yeah. First off, I don't have a gaydar at all. It doesn't exist. I cannot tell people, but I think that goes back to exactly what you're saying, that there is just a spectrum, and people regardless. There's so many different shades of the rainbow. Like there's just so many different types of people on planet Earth, and so you can be any spectrum of that. And I just think being supportive in general of that is what the administration and anyone should be focusing on. Is just whatever your colors are, like just be willing to, I guess, be willing to have the conversation with yourself, and then be able to tolerate other people's colors. So, and it's hard to describe, and I mean, for me, it was hard. It's still right now is hard to describe. It's not an easy thing to articulate what shades you are, because it's a spectrum of things, and it's just a matter of digging deeper and being able to have the conversation with yourself and be willing to change and explore different things. And I think that ultimately is what's going to make you a good human being, is just by it's trial and error, but it's also just exploring. And isn't that what's awesome about living life, is like it's not the destination, it's the journey. So just continuing to explore and and be willing to work with people and tolerate other people who are exploring themselves as well. So
thank you. That was really well said. So another question we had, kind of our last pre-planned discussion question, was basically what changes, improvements would you make both on and off campus to better suit this community? But I think most of you really articulated that, except maybe since we talked more about on campus, if there's any suggestions you have for off campus. I know, Alex, you had mentioned that the surrounding community wasn't necessarily the most tolerant and accepting. If any of you have suggestions, ideas, thoughts about that.
I mean, the surrounding community around Cornell is like more accepting than Cornell. It's pretty. Ithaca is a very eclectic, interesting place. It's a very hippie town, and like everybody's just super cool with however you identify. So I think the work more needs to be done at Cornell, for sure. Just more funding where this resources are needed, more funding and more like structure for sure.
I don't know. It's kind of a big question. Like, how do you fix society? I have no idea. I think people just need to be more compassionate. I don't know how you facilitate that at all. Yeah, this is why I'm not a chemist, not a politician. I don't know how people work.
I think it's just like continuing the conversation and just keeping it going. Show people who aren't supportive that we're not going anywhere. We're here, and we're all over the place. So, you know, it's, you know, I accept them and all that they do. So I guess I am requesting the same respect, and it's just the same. It's a continuous conversation. Just show that we're not going anywhere. So just in finding ways to describe that with people other than the usual way of just like I don't know, using it as a bad term, like that's so gay and everything, and that's how it is coming up in elementary schools. And I feel like it's just the more people are willing to explore that about themselves, the more other people who don't associate with that are going to see that there are people out there and that they need, you know, just as much respect, and they provide just as much value as they do to planet Earth. And yeah.
All right, thank you. Did we get any text messages in?
Not any good ones.
Not any good ones, okay. Dan, just kind of one quick follow-up question. I mean,
Sure.
You did articulate that the surrounding community is more, you know, supportive. Do you think there are any, I don't know, not necessarily resources, but any influence that the external community, the surrounding community, could have to improve campus, or is it just? I mean, that's another big question. Like Summer said, it's hard to figure policy or anything like that. But just what your thoughts?
I think in general, like, you know, Cornell is very supporting of, like, the only reason why Ithaca exists is because of Cornell. So to flip the table around and say, like, what can Ithaca do for Cornell is a really tough question. But I don't know, just more, I think Cornell can definitely be better with, like, community involvement. I know there's a lot of gay outlets, like specific gay outlets in Ithaca, and I don't think that Cornell students are encouraged to tap into those. So if there was some sort of, like, you know, more community involvement, like, you know, more like linking bridges between, you know, what the community is doing, what Cornell is doing, I think that would really facilitate, you know, like other outlets, like, you know, maybe students don't want to be, like, on campus. Maybe they want to do something more with the whole, like, Ithaca community. Like, you know, it's just more options. So if you can really tap into the community, what it's doing, and then you let students, like, spread their wings even more.
All right, thank you. All right, so no text. Okay. Anybody else? Any of our other team members have anything they want to ask while we're very good? I guess since I think we're good with everything. Thank you guys so much for taking the time. Yeah, thank you. All right, take care.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.